Cody here with DadThere.com, and I have been going through a series of conversations with other dads because DadThere is all about daring myself to become and be the best dad that I can be. And in that process of sharing my journey and learning, I have been daring other dads to do the same. And today we're having a conversation with my good friend Chad Youngquist, and I'm excited to tell you more. Hey, before I forget, if you're on YouTube, push that subscribe button all the way in and click the bell so you get notified when we post new videos. If you're on Facebook, hit that thumbs up button. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you subscribe. And if you haven't done so yet, check out DadThere.com. All right, Chad, so today we're talking about being a dad. A huge topic, super important to you. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. Other people have recommended that I come and talk to you,
right on.
Believe it or not. And so I'm really just excited to hear from you and kind of gain some wisdom. I know that the time that we have is short, and there's a lot that we could talk about.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of prepped you a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. But why don't you give just a brief explanation of who you are, maybe some of your work background as well as your family background.
Sure. Chad Youngquist. My wife's name is Jamie. We have two kids. Macy is 14 and Max is 12. And Max is autistic, and so that's made our parenting situation challenging. But we are custom home builders. We run our own business. So my wife does the books, and so we work together, we play together, we parent together, we're with each other all the time, and that actually is a huge benefit for given our situation. I'm 44 years old. We've been married for 19 years now, and we were married for 5 years before we had kids, and that was kind of by design. We liked the thought of getting to know each other well, and that timeline sort of sped up. We thought, no, maybe 3 years, and then we had some sort of life-threatening situations happen, and then the clock got pushed back out to 5 years before we had kids. But we look back on that time as just paramount in our situation. In hindsight, having that time where it was just Jamie and I, getting to know each other, getting to know our idiosyncrasies, and learning how to love each other appropriately set us up well for parenting, especially with a special needs child. And so we valued that, and here we are 14 years into being parents, and it's been a crazy ride, but it's been fun.
Yeah, and so that was one of the big pieces of why I was looking forward to talking to you, is because you come from a unique story where, you probably weren't planning on having a child with special needs, but now this has become probably the main topic of your daily life.
Yeah, our design was, it's funny when we say that, because when our plans are always one thing and God has another plan, but the thought was to have two kids, have them close together in age, kind of get them through diapers, get them on snow skis and behind the boat, and they're close enough in age where they can partner together, and then get them out of the house and be married again. And that while we had two kids and they're close together in age, the rest of that plan is like gone. And so we recognize that we may never get our house just totally empty nested. And so that scenario has changed. Our plan is now way different, or our process is way different than our plan was. But it's something that we're excited about, and we're excited that God trusts us to do things differently than we thought we would do them. So
yeah, I'm curious, with your perspective of being a dad so far, if you could describe that process of being a dad in 3 words for you specifically, what would those 3 words be?
I think rewarding, fascinating, and hard. And when I say rewarding, for all the dads watching this, you'll understand when you see that child born and you recognize that it's your DNA and it's you and your spouse come together and God creates this thing and grows inside the womb and is born, and that the moment that child breathes their first breath, there's an instantaneous bond, and it's indescribable. I wouldn't have believed you if you would have told me before I was a dad. And for you dads of daughters out there, I think it's even a bigger thing with daughters, the dad-daughter bond, instantaneous when they're born. So our daughter's older and our firstborn child, and I was shocked at this little bundle of messy human coming out of the womb, and just this instantaneous love and this connection that we had. And then the other rewarding part is watching them grow and recognizing that these little humans are still your DNA, and a lot of their trajectory has to do with how you lead them and how you parent them and what you do about making mistakes along the way, because we're going to. And so the rewarding thing, it's rewarding, I guess, is the first word, because of all these bonds and these connections and the growth and development you see from it. The fascinating part for me is kind of twofold. The more important fascinating part is I'm a Christian, and so I have a relationship with a Heavenly Father, and being a dad is, to an earthly child, is the most revealing thing about my relationship with my Heavenly Father. I mean, we get frustrated with our kids, and we teach our kids these things, and they screw up, and maybe they screw up over and over and over with the same thing. And as a dad, my tendency is to say, you should know better, or get frustrated with them and get upset. And the moment I do that, and the moment I've said those words, you should know better, there's a massive revelation for me in my life of that's what it must be like for God. But he never gets mad at me, and he never says you should know better. And so the fascinating part for me, the most fascinating part for me in being a father, is how much it reveals about my relationship with my Heavenly Father. The other fascinating part for me is autism. Max is autistic, and it is fascinating to see how his brain works. We don't understand it. I don't know if we ever will. We feel like Jamie and I are always a couple steps behind in figuring him out as he grows and develops and into new things. And there are some things about Max that are extraordinary. And so it's just fascinating to see his memory, or to just watch him be a human compass. He always knows where he's at and what direction he's facing, and he knew how to get us home from anywhere when he was 3 years old. And so there's a lot of really fascinating aspects. There's a lot of hard stuff too. But those two are fascinating, because you want to understand, you want to know why he just said what he said, or how he's experiencing things, because of sensory issues might be normal to you and I, are not normal to him, and they're painful for him. And so I'm fascinated by that. Like I want to know how his brain works, but he doesn't know how to tell us, and he doesn't know how to explain it. And so it's fascinating to me, but that leads me to the third word, which is hard.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. I mean, parents, you know that being a parent is one of the hardest things in normal circumstances. And being a parent of a special needs child in our circumstances is incredibly difficult. It's difficult on our physical health, our mental health, and when you put the two together, it oftentimes damages our spiritual health. And so that's this sort of notion that we've got to pay attention to what's going on. It's hard on our marriage, and it's hard on our relationships with the other kids who don't get all the forced attention. And so it's hard, but we're learning to take care of ourselves and make sure we can be the best parents that we can be, while still remaining hyper focused on finding whatever it is that's going to help our kids. And so yeah, those are my 3 words.
Yeah, those are good. I like them.
Yeah.
What was it like when your son was born, and that process of like figuring out that he had special needs?
Yeah, so he's high functioning, and so today if you saw him at our daughter's basketball game, it might take you a little bit to figure out that something's different. And so as a baby, it was even less profound. And so, but the one thing that happened right at childbirth, and I think it was a God thing, where he just began to place a little seed in our hearts of, hey, this is going to be different. When he was born, he came out like gray as a ghost. And it surprised me. I didn't expect that. You imagine a pink baby, or red kind of.
Yeah.
And he was gray, and it kind of startled me for a second. I didn't say anything right at first, but then the other thing that kind of caught me off guard was that you'd think that a baby leaves a 98-degree womb and hits the cold air of a hospital room and like breathes that first breath, and almost every baby cries right at the beginning. Like, it's just a giant change of scenery and environment, and they aren't ready for it. And he didn't make a peep. He came out. I cut the umbilical cord, and they kind of did their thing, ran a couple tests and weighed him and stuff, and wrapped him up and gave him to Jamie. And in the process of all that, he just laid down next to Jamie and just didn't make a sound. And so the combination, he was calm. The combination of him coming out looking almost like he wasn't alive, and then the nurse doing their tests, and like nobody's alarmed at anything, so okay, it must be all right. And then he lays down next to Jamie. He didn't cry for the first couple hours of his life, and when the dust settled and the nurses were gone, and it was just Jamie and Max and I in the room, I looked at her and I just said, something was different. And I get emotional thinking about it, but
that's all right.
She said, yeah, I feel it too. And the next morning, we didn't have a name for him because he was 2.5 weeks early or something, and we hadn't landed on his name. And the next morning, this was like 1:30 in the morning when he was born, and so we got some sleep. And the next morning, I said, hey, what's the boy's name? And we had a couple in mind, and she goes, I don't think those names are appropriate. I think I like something different. And I said, okay, well, like what? She's like, I think he's gonna be a different kid, and he might be a little intense, and I think his name is Max. And I said, like maximum danger? And she laughed and said, no, like Maxwell. And so his name is Maxwell Briggs, and Briggs is Jamie's maiden name. So, yeah.
Wow, man. What a roller coaster.
Yeah, and so we, in the process of the next 3 to 5 years, we bounced in and out of hospitals, and hearing tests and vision tests and chromosome testing and all these things, trying to figure out what was going on, because he didn't make any of the milestones that you would expect a child to make, and did a lot of the kind of token autistic things, a lot of stimming, he would just sit on the carpet and rub his feet for hours. He would line his toys up in a totally straight row.
Really?
Not play with them, he'd just line them up. And so
How old was that?
This was as a toddler.
Wow.
Yeah, so 1-2 years old.
Yeah.
And so, but he had a lot of eye contact, and he liked physical touch. And so there were some things that didn't fit the autism description very well. But when about 3 or 4 years old, his behavior really turned sour, and we started to kind of go back to the research, and actually looked up the diagnosis criteria on our own, and it said, here you got to check these boxes, and 3 out of these 5 things need to happen, and like a couple pages of this. And I went through on my own one night and looked at it and was like, ooh, yeah, we should probably get back in. And so I think he was, by the time this all came about, he was, I think, 5 before we got an official autism diagnosis from Seattle Children's Hospital. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you had that internal of like, okay, something's different, and then throughout the years, there was more and more confirmation. And you finally got to this point where it's like, okay, officially, he is different. At that point, what was that like for you to kind of, were you able to kind of breathe and be like, okay, at least now we have something?
Yeah, so for some people, a diagnosis is really scary. And but for us, a diagnosis didn't change anything about us. The only thing it changed was access to services and appropriate educational measures to take. And so he had been in the Birth to 3 program with our school district, and then when he entered elementary school, he was automatically part of the special ed program. And so he's been mainstreamed most of his elementary career, but pulled out for special services. And so kind of a dual special ed, mainstream ed, public school system way of education. But yeah, for us it wasn't a big downer. It wasn't a big surprise. It wasn't anything other than a formality, because we already knew, like, hey, we know something's going on. Yeah, we'd love a name for it, because in the absence of a name, you list out a bunch of idiosyncrasies or traits about your child. So if I can say to you, Cody, my son Max is autistic, is way easier than saying, Cody, my son does this.
Yeah.
He hates it when I do this, and he punches his sister when he's mad. Like all these things.
Right.
And so for us, it was a way for us to say, okay, this is officially what we're calling it, and now he has access to services because of an official diagnosis.
Yeah. I do have my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and we had a whole course that I remember where all it was diagnosing. We would just read these stories, and then we tried to figure out what was the diagnosis. And the diagnosis, what I remember is just like, diagnosing someone would create a framework to work with. It would give you a platform of like, okay, now we can start moving forward in this direction. And if there was a mistake in that process, then like as we move forward, like we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But it's a starting point of like, okay, like this is what we think it is. The most educated diagnosis is this, and so let's start working with that. And then each case is individual inside of that window. So we have the spectrum of autism, and so there's a large variety. But you said he's high functioning, so that would be very different from somebody on the other end.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can see how getting that diagnosis would be like a confirmation, but at the same time you've been living with him this whole time, so it didn't change anything.
Yeah.
Besides, like, okay, now we can move forward in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Taylor and I are expecting a baby in August.
Congratulations.
And it's our number 1, and so that's a large part of this DadThere. It's like,
right.
you know, trying to prepare, even though there's some ways you just can't prepare. But, you know, there's a possibility that we could have a child with special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say to someone in my situation that, you know, hasn't had a child yet, but has, like, that could happen in my future? Like, what would you say to me?
I would say to you, you're the only person that God trusts to care for that child properly. The only person out of billions of people on this planet, that child with those set of needs, you are the only person that he trusts. You and Taylor. And you have to move forward in confidence. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. You're not going to know what to do. Maybe a majority of the time. You're going to experience trial and error on a new level. But at the end of the day, you're the only one he trusts to be dad. There's no one warming up in the bullpen. There's no tag team wrestler to come in and take over. It's you. You're the one he trusts.
Wow. That's really powerful. I mean, it sounds like a privilege.
Well, I say that fairly quickly and easily because I had to tell myself that. And it took me a while to learn that.
Yeah.
Because to this day, I mean, I can recall the last 72 hours where I've failed. And I've failed, in my mind, kind of miserably at being a good dad. And I talked to Jamie about it. I'm like, God, I wish I could do better with this. And we talk through it, and at the end of the conversation, it always comes back to, he trusts us. God trusts us with this unique bundle of energy. We're the only ones that he trusted. And I have to keep telling myself that because it's out of necessity, really. It's healthy for me to continue to tell myself that, because without that, it's so easy to begin to let those feelings of failure take over and do damage to your psyche. And so I only say that because I have to say it to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really positive narrative to be speaking over yourself. And I hope that it's helpful, too, to even say it to me, for you to verbalize it, to hear yourself saying it out loud.
Yeah.
And
quite frankly, it doesn't matter if your child is special needs or neurodiverse or neurotypical or savant or whatever. The same thing applies. You're the only one he trusts.
Right.
With that child.
Yeah.
So walk into being a dad with that in mind. No matter what happens, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of my biggest fears is failure. And, you know, it comes from that insecurity that, like, I don't know what I'm doing, or just that I know that I make mistakes, you know, and so that narrative really gives you a sense of confidence that it's okay. Like, the fact that you're making effort towards being the best dad you can be, like, that's what counts.
You know, a mistake is an opportunity for you and that child to learn something maybe more important than they could have learned if the mistake hadn't been made. How you handle that mistake. We're all going to make them, and it's inevitable. We're going to scar our children in some way. But how you handle that, how you go back to that child and said, hey, my job is to be the best dad I can be and raise you the best way possible. And I blew it right back there. I didn't do the right thing. And I want you to know that I'm sorry, and I need your forgiveness, and we're going to keep working on this. And the information and process that your child receives from that act of how you manage your mistakes might be more valuable than just being a good dad all the time. And so we learn through adversity, right? I mean, some of our biggest lessons in life come from trials and tribulations, and our strength is built from hard things. And so I believe all of our mistakes and all of our the stupid things that we do can be turned around for good when we handle them correctly.
Yeah, that's really good. What would you say is your biggest motivation, your number one motivation to be the best dad you can be?
I don't know. I think it goes back to my own dad. My dad is awesome. I love my dad, and I've been a parent for 14 years, and as I've parented, I've thought way more about my relationship with my dad, I think, that in those last 14 years than I did in the first 20, 30 years before I had kids. And so I look at my situation now with my kids, and I remember my dad being a stud. My dad was a rock. My dad led our family through some crazy experiences, and made sacrifice so that we could have incredible family time together, and provided a way for us to learn from our mistakes, be blessed with the ability to do some fun things, and love my mom in the midst of all that. And I think for any of us, parents or children, or if our parents are still alive, one of the biggest things that we take from our parents is how well they love each other. And so I saw my dad model that, and to this day they're 75 years old, and they're down in Mexico doing mission trips together right now. And they're getting older, and it's harder for them to get around, and it's dangerous because if my mom slips, she could really hurt herself with, it's a different environment. And I just love it because they're together, they're having fun together, they're loving each other well, and they're loving other people well, and thinking about loving their neighbor, and thinking about making this world a better place. And I see that, and he is such an awesome role model, my dad. So he was able to be a kind of person that he knew that I needed to see, and my brother and sister needed to see. So he was a model. He role modeled all of the good things, but beyond that, he actually stepped aside and also taught us what it's like, taught us how to fix our mistakes, taught us how to do things. He didn't just do, he did and taught. And I think that's my motivation to be the best dad is my definition of a good father is to be a good role model and to teach how to be that same role model to our kids. And so I saw that in my dad, and I look at my own life now with my children, and I go, man, I want to be like that. And I want to each generation, I want that next generation to build on the previous generation, and learn how to love your neighbor better, and learn how to be a productive member of society, and that mission with our son is going to be incredibly hard. We acknowledge that some of those dreams and ambitions of building on the next generation might not happen with him. He's actually the last male in the Youngquist line.
Oh wow!
And so it's like it may be the end of a namesake, but our daughter is an incredible human being, and Like if we have difficulty on this end with parenting a special needs child, we've got ease on this end of kind of this kid that like it completely different parenting because she's such a great kid, so easygoing and just an awesome human being. And so we take what we have and we say, okay, what is best for the next generation and how can we raise our kids? How were we raised? What was role modeled for us that was well? Where can we learn from mistakes of the generation before us? Implement that into our own parenting style and our own people that we are, and then show that to our kids, both being a role model and being a leader and teaching them to do it as well.
Yeah, that's really powerful perspective.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of things that, like you've said, there's a lot of principles, a lot of deep thought that I'm just gonna have to keep mulling over in my mind. And I like to think of situations that could be, you know, that we could have a special needs child, and try to prepare myself for that situation. Even if it doesn't happen, I feel like there's a good mental practice in that. And so talking with you has been super helpful.
Well, it's a good exercise no matter what. I mean, parenting isn't easy. And so preparing yourself, I wouldn't say for the worst, I'd say preparing yourself for whatever life may be like,
right? Yeah,
is always a good thing. I crack up because you know you have these gender reveal parties, or you have these things in this kind of, or gifts where you shower the bride with gifts or the baby with gifts and these things, and it's funny to me because like where's the gauntlet party? Like we set mom and dad up who they're you know, mom's pregnant and dad's there and they haven't had their first kid yet, and let's run them through a gauntlet because this is more like real life. Let's let them get knocked off their feet a bunch of times. They get back up. We got everybody cheering for them, and they get knocked down again, and they make it to the first stage, and they're on that first stage platform, and everyone's cheering for them, and they're happy because they think they got it now. And then all of a sudden, the wrecking ball just comes and wipes them right off the stage, and and they get up, and they got to make it to the next stage, and the gauntlet is just thrashing them and beating them up and knocking them down, and they continue to get up, and they make it to the next stage, and they're thinking, yeah, we got it now, and then all of a sudden, boom, they get knocked off again. Like, that's the reality. Like, it might be a little harsh, what I just said, because there's a ton of love and laughter and just life-giving things along the way, but it's a gauntlet, man, where it's there's no rule book, there's no guidebook, there's no there's no preparation. Like we do what we can. You're doing an awesome thing with this DadThere thing. You're being very cognizant of what it might be like, and you're trying to prepare yourself. Super admirable stuff. But at the same time, like nothing can prepare you. Right. Like I laugh because I like to surf. And I don't get to do it very often because we're landlocked here in central Washington. But when I get out there, I think, man, I should have worked out better because my shoulders are tired and I'm paddling is just laborious when you haven't done it in a while. And I laugh because the only thing that gets you in shape for paddling a surfboard is paddling. Yeah. And so, like, there's no way you can work out that in that motion. You can swim, maybe that helps, but it's like that with parenting, man. The only way to get good at parenting is actually doing it. Yeah. And so, but what you're doing is pretty awesome. Being very aware of the fact that you are embarking on a life-altering situation, not just for you, not just for Taylor, but for that child too. Mm-hmm. Like the decisions that you make for the next year, 5 years, 20 years, maybe 50 years, are going to be life trajectory types of decisions for 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 people who how many ever kids you're going to have. Mm-hmm. It's awesome what you're doing because you're trying to look at this thing from all sides and go, hey, how can I do this the best possible way. And I think it's awesome. I think every dad needs to do what you're doing. And I think that I would have better prepared myself had I thought about this a lot more. And I will add that no matter how crazy that gauntlet is, no matter how hard it's been parenting a special needs child, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
And that's that.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, that is so good and so true. And I definitely am holding on to that truth that like there will be things, ways I can't prepare, and even though like I'm having these conversations and studying and everything, but yeah, I'm not expecting to enter into parenting with this like, okay, I got it, mentality. And the big part about why I'm recording these conversations for you as you're watching and listening is so that this can be shared. There's a lot of these conversations that I'm having that I'm actually not recording, that are at a restaurant, or maybe somebody that doesn't want to be on camera, but being able to record some of these, my hope is that it will provide content so that other current and future dads can just soak it up and learn from it. And it's not just coming straight to me, but I'm able to share it and,
Yeah.
So where you have a blog.
I do.
And why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Where can they find your content?
So our blog is shockandautism.com, shockandautism.com. And it's basically just a little bit, like mostly stories of our family situation, but the end goal in every single blog post is providing help for other parents in our circumstances, where it's not just a story about what happened to us or what is happening to us. It's, hey, here's some things that's gone on in our home that reminds me that there is a message behind it for you parents that are maybe just starting your journey, or you parents that are very downtrodden in your journey. Here's a life lesson. Here's a nugget of information. Here's something that you can walk away with every time you read a blog post and say, okay, I can feel better about my situation now, or I can do a better job next time given a circumstance, or hey, that's the way I've been thinking this whole time and it needs to change because it's not healthy. Like there's those kinds of things that we try to do with every blog post. It's not just a memoir of our experience. It's hey, here's some excerpts from our life, but the real meat of every blog post is you need to walk away with this thing and implement it in your own life. And so shockandautism.com, and then the other thing that we are planning to do that's been very heavy on our hearts for the last couple of years is start a program for parents with special needs kids where they focus on their holistic health. Because most parents get a diagnosis or they get faced with a set of challenges and they go to the ends of the earth to find help for their child. And in the meantime, they get exhausted physically, they get mentally downtrodden, they become spiritually bankrupt, and then they begin to crumble. And it's happened in our own home. It's happened to me. And this sort of wake-up call that Jamie and I have had over the last couple of years is, if we want to do the best job we possibly can as parents, it starts with us. And so we have to maintain our health. We have to be physically fit. We have to be mentally strong in the challenges that we face, and spiritually speaking, we've got to be at peace. And so we're developing a program that encourages parents with special needs kids to stop for a second, focus on their own health and wellness, so that they can be the best parents they can be. And it's not quite live yet. So
That's awesome. I'm excited for it. So check out shockandautism.com if you want to follow their content. And thank you so much for sitting down and sharing wisdom. It's been awesome. I look forward to more conversations to come.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll see you in the next one, and Dad's hats off to you.